Unfortunately, I am worried that the scenario of Iraq will be implemented against Iran. If you remember, there was a sanction against Iraq for about 10 years or more, and there were inspectors coming and going from the nuclear agency. And of course, they did not discover anything at all. And now we have the same thing. Now the West and America in particular, they are putting this pressure on Iran, although the inspectors are coming. Iran itself invited the agency to come, and they had discussion last month, and it is coming probably in a week's time, the representative. But to be honest with you, Iran is worried that some of these inspectors might be spies, and they are getting the information and passed it to the United States and to Israel. This is the thing. And also, on the other hand, there is nothing to show that Iran is producing a nuclear weapon, but still they are strangling the Iranian nations by this sanction. I mean, the main source of the Iranian nation, the income, is only oil. And they are putting pressure on Iran to stop or to prevent Iran from exporting oil. This is unethical and probably illegal.
Well, maybe the world has wised up since Iraq was their first time at bat, and we saw what happened there. James Fetzer, let's look at some of the allegations. On February 2nd, 2012, Israel's chief of military intelligence, Major General Aviv Kochavi, claimed that Iran is 1 year away from building the nuclear bomb. He made the remarks at the Herzliya Conference for Strategic Affairs in Tel Aviv. 16 years ago, Shimon Peres, then Israel's prime minister, said exactly the same thing. That's back in 1996. And 20 years ago, in 1992, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's the current Israeli prime minister, said that Iran would have a nuclear bomb by 1999. And that would be 13 years ago. Why this nuclear bomb keeps turning up both by the United States and Israel?
Well, these hysterical anti-Iran attacks coming from Israeli politicians have no basis in fact. Iran has allowed inspectors in. American intelligence agencies have concluded they aren't developing a nuclear weapon. Their motto is nuclear energy for all, nuclear weapons for none. The attacks that Israel is claiming the Iranians are perpetrating, for example, in Thailand, appear to be the work of the Mossad itself. The Thai authorities are claiming they have to do more analysis to figure out what's going on, and yet the leaders of Israel are proclaiming that it's clearly the work of Iran. The fact is that historically, Israel has been the greatest practitioner of false flag terrorism in recent history, going back to 1947, when a gang of Irgun terrorists dressed as Arabs attacked the King David Hotel, or 1967, when Israeli aircraft torpedoed and strafed the USS Liberty in an effort to blame it on the Egyptians and draw the United States into the Six-Day War, or false flag attacks in Argentina in 1992 and 1994, where the Mossad attacked its own Israeli embassy in 1992, and then apparently not bringing enough deaths, attacked its own Jewish community center in order to undermine Argentine support and cooperation for the peaceful development of nuclear weapons. When you read the fine print, you discover that Iran has introduced a 20% increase in enrichment, which is enough to power the medical research facility, but not to develop nuclear weapons.
And at the same time, Iran, Professor Marandi, has left the door open to the IAEA. The positive trip recently made by the senior UN nuclear inspectors is an example. Another trip is in the works, from what I believe. And not to mention the P5+1 talks to be held in Turkey. I mean, this is Iran's dual-track approach, but why is the West, in terms of their approach, always using as one track the threat of wars?
Well, I think it reveals a great deal about the state of affairs in the West and how they constantly threaten countries with war, with destruction, with death, with embargoes, the attempt to prevent Iranians from importing grain and rice shows how inhuman Western European and North American politicians behave when it comes to Iran, and how immoral what the Western media is with regards to Iran. It is very important to note that all of the Iranian installations, including the Fordo installation near Qom, are under IAEA supervision. In other words, the IAEA, first of all, they have permanent representatives here in Iran. They have cameras installed in all the installations, and there is absolutely no deviation whatsoever in any of the installations. Beyond that, I think it's also important to note that the recent attacks that have taken place in India, in Thailand, and in Georgia, they do seem very clearly to be false flag operations. And the case of India is particularly important because India is one of Iran's key friends in the region, and it imports a large amount of Iranian oil. And it's quite clear that the attempt here is to create tension within Iranian-Indian relations at a time when the Indians have decided to work more closely with Iran with regards to the import of Iranian oil and paying the Iranians for that oil. So, and it's quite possible that in the near future similar attacks will be carried out in other countries close to Iran, like China or Brazil or South Africa or BRICS countries, perhaps, to create problems with regards to Iran's relationship with these countries. But the point really is that Western countries and their allies, they assassinate Iranian scientists, they murder people, they impose an embargo on the ordinary Iranian population to make ordinary people suffer. And at the end of the day, they make demands on the Iranian people and portray Iran as somehow the perpetrator and the troublemaker, whereas Iran is working within the framework of international law. Iran's nuclear program is peaceful, and the Iranians, in fact, the only reason why they produce enriched uranium at 20% was because Western countries refused to provide Iran with that fuel. They tried to prevent Iran from putting new fuel into the Tehran experimental reactor, which is for cancer patients, in order to put pressure on the country. In other words, Western countries were playing with the lives of cancer patients. So the Iranians had no option but to produce this fuel. And interestingly, the fact that Iran produced this fuel at 20% means that this fuel can no longer be used for nuclear weapons. So in a sense, Iran is helping the West.
And in a sense, Jafar Hadi Hassan, it's a game changer, isn't it? Because right now, the West demanding that Iran surrender its capacity to enrich uranium really is a thing of the past. So given this new atmosphere, what type of approach is the West left in terms of dealing with Iran?
Well, I tell you, to be honest with you, there is an element of Israel playing a big role in here. Israel does not want any country to have any nuclear energy for civil use.